If you're confused with all of the advice out there about buying a property versus renting, then I have made this video for you. With getting on the property ladder becoming increasingly unaffordable, and that age-old advice that you should be buying rather than renting because renting is throwing your money away, I wanted to do a deep dive using actual numbers to see whether you'd be better off buying a property or investing. I've never seen anyone run the numbers on a video before, so I wanted to break it down and see what actually adds up at the end. Because I'm based in London, UK, the numbers I'm going to use are based off of what is an average for rental in London, as well as an average first-time buyer entry-level price property. Now, obviously, these amounts will change based on where you are in the world, but the point of this exercise is to see whether over time, if buying would have actually saved you more money versus renting. Now, I'm starting this video with not actually knowing what the real answer is going to be. So come on this journey with me and let's find out together. Hey, I'm Dahlia. I am a finance grad who's worked in sales and asset management in the City of London for 7 years before quitting it all to start my own business. I have learned a lot along the way, and now I'm sharing the money, business, and property tips that I've learned to help powerhouse people like you get on top financially. Let's go. Now, before I get started on this, I'm going to put a few caveats in place because everyone's starting point is going to be different based on what area you live in, how much of a deposit you already have saved up for a place, and so many other factors which are personal. So for this video, I'm going to use the figures that I've researched as being the average price for buying versus renting. So for London, we're going to work off the following figures. The average amount of deposit saved for a purchase is 20%. The average first-time buyer property cost in London is £500,000. The average cost of renting a room in London is £1,000 per month. Now, mortgage rates will obviously vary as well. So for this exercise, I'm going to use the average current mortgage interest rate in the UK, which is 4.75%. Now, interest rates are quite high at the moment as they saw quite a hike around 2022. But as we can't predict the future of what interest rates may drop to, let's use this current average interest rate as our example during this video. So let's get into it and compare the figures. So our first person is buying a house with a mortgage of 30 years. So on a property of £500,000 with a 20% deposit, you have a mortgage of £400,000 with 4.75% interest. I like to work with nice even figures, so I'm going to do very small roundups for this. So your average monthly mortgage repayment on this is going to be £2,090 a month. Now, obviously, mortgage rates are not the only things that you need to factor in for expenses for a property that you own. You also need to factor in things like maintenance costs, solicitors' fees, and stamp duty. So let's get into it. So maintenance costs, the widely accepted estimate is this is about 1% of your property's value each year. That is a standard recommendation for maintenance and repairs. So for our £500,000 property, this is an annual maintenance budget of about £5,000. Now, there are also expenses involved in buying the property to start with, including solicitors' fees, which from my own experience of buying in London is about £3,500. Then there's also stamp duty. So for first-time buyers in the UK, that is 2%. So that's going to add £10,000 to the cost of your property. Now, something that people may not take into account is the cost of remortgaging. If you want to get the lowest fixed rate on your mortgage, you're going to have to remortgage every 2 years. And the cost of doing that is around £1,000 every 2 years, which is going to be £15,000 over the 30-year mortgage term. So by the time you own your house in 30 years' time, here's what you're going to have spent. Your monthly mortgage repayment on £400,000 at 4.75% per year for 30 years is around £2,086. Here's the list of your total cash outflows over 30 years. These are going to be your mortgage repayments, maintenance, solicitor fees, stamp duty, remortgaging fees, and deposit. And that has cost us a grand total of £1,028,672. So that is the total amount that the buyer of the house has paid out over 30 years, including their initial £100,000 deposit. So we also need to assume that property is going to appreciate in price. The UK average is currently 2 to 3%. So I'm going to work off the lower example of 2% appreciation for this. At the end of the 30 years, your £500,000 house is now going to be worth £905,000. Okay, now let's look at our renter. In example number 2, you will be renting for 30 years. Now, we're going to make a few assumptions here as well. We're going to make the assumption that you are investing the difference between the cost of owning your property and renting your property into an index fund that's returning on average 7% a year. So you're spending the same money month on month is what I'm trying to say. We're also going to work off the assumption that the cost of your rent goes up by 4% a year, which was the average annual rise in London over the last 10 years, not adjusted for inflation. So if the renter invests the monthly savings, that is the amount that they're saved by renting rather than buying. Remember, our mortgage was £2,086 and your rent is £1,000. So we're investing £1,086 a month into an index fund, returning 7% a year. Assuming that you did not invest the initial £100,000 deposit, your final value is going to be £1.25 million. And in the second example of the renter, let's say that they did have that £100,000 deposit at the start to invest, plus all the monthly amounts that they're going to invest over that 30-year period. The final amount that they're going to end up with at the end of 30 years is £2,067,988. Okay, so let's compare these side by side. The homeowner has had total cash outflows of £1,029,000, including their £100,000 deposit, £751,000 of mortgage repayments, £150,000 of maintenance, £3,500 on solicitors' fees, £10,000 on stamp duty, and £15,000 on remortgage fees. Now, their property value after 30 years at a modest 2% annual growth is £905,000. So their net position, that is the value of the asset that they own now, which is the house, minus their cash outflows, is £123,991. Now let's look at our renter. The total rent that they've paid over 30 years is £673,000. If they invested their monthly savings, the difference between owning and renting, these are the figures that they're going to end up with. Without investing that initial 100k deposit, they're going to end up with £1.2 million. If they do have 100k to invest at the start of the 30 years, they're going to end up with £2,029,000. So in both scenarios for the renter, whether they had £100,000 to invest at the start or not, the renter is actually coming out better off in 30 years' time. Let's run the numbers one more time. At the end of 30 years, our homeowner has spent £1,029,000 and they now have an asset worth £900,000. Our renter has spent £673,000 on rent, but after investing the difference now has £1.2 million. That is a difference of £545,000. Our renter in scenario 2, who invested the initial £100,000, still paid £673,000 in rent, has also invested that £100,000 and has come out in the end with £2,029,000. That is £1.356 million at the end of 30 years. So I said I was going to take you along for this journey with me, and honestly, after running the numbers, I am shocked. I am currently in the process of buying my first house that I'm going to live in, and these figures have got me questioning my whole life. However, for me personally, the decision to buy is more of an emotional reason. I would really like to have a place to call my own, decorate, feel safe that I'm protected against rent rises, and also that I'm not going to be kicked out because the owner of the place needs their property back. So I obviously used a lot of averages and assumptions for this exercise. I have run it with quite a few different numbers, and it actually ends up with the renters coming out on top every time. But this is obviously going to change based on where you are, how much your rent is, and how much an average first-time buyer property is, and of course whether you have that deposit amount to invest or not. I hope this video was useful for you and it can help you decide whether renting or buying is better for you. I'd love for you to tell me in the comments whether this video has changed your perspective on buying versus renting. Thank you for watching Get On Top. This is my channel about personal finance, investing, business and property. If you've liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. I'm going to be releasing new content like this every single week, and I'd love for you to come along for the journey. Ciao for now.